Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry. In celebration of Sinamai Humanities Month, activist author Julian Aguon presented the month's keynote address on October 28, 2022 at American Memorial Park in Saipan. Julian is an indigenous human rights lawyer and writer from Guam. He's the founder of Blue Ocean Law, a boutique international law firm that works across Oceania at the intersection of indigenous rights and environmental justice. Our show today features excerpts from his remarks, focusing on his most recent publication, The Properties of Perpetual Light.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to the Humanities Council. Thank you to the college. Oh, gosh. As Lola said, I just finished a 6-week book tour that was pretty mind-blowing in many ways. But honestly, the absolute best part about the book tour is that I met so many young islanders from several islands, but also from Guam and the NMI, who were college students, who were med students, law students, young writers, aspiring artists, entrepreneurs. I mean, people whose dreams are big, young people who were stretching and taking up space in the world. Young people who prove that smallness is a state of mind, Like that is what I really clearly got from this book tour. I mean, and some of them, especially some of the really young ones that came up, and it was very endearing, but shaking and nervous. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe the sort of level of love and appreciation. That's what it is. It's not about we can throw around words like whatever, fangirling or fanboying, but that's not at all what it is. It's like I managed to succeed at my initial goal, which is to find a way to write, in a way that's quiet, in a way that's radically loving, in a way that says, wherever you are, I want to meet you, wherever that is. It's hard not to get emotional, especially in this audience, because this is it. This is my absolute last, thing, that this whole process has been mind-blowing. And I'll just let you know, the other good thing that just happened was, it just happened and I was advised I should share this. So Michelle Obama, when she was still in the White House, started this national initiative, and it's targeted primarily at high school students across the country, and really, really, really trying to get them over that hurdle, especially in the first generation, to make sure that they're the first generation college student. And as of yesterday, the book has been officially included in this national reading list. Wow. So actually, so high schoolers across America will also be learning about our islands, and a lot of our people are diasporic. A lot of them do live in the States. So I'm hoping, to reach all of them. And I think that's what I wanted to tell you before I start reading. I'm going to read an excerpt and then just quickly talk about sort of the origin about the book, my process of writing it, what I believed. I was asked to speak about a few themes about social justice, indigeneity, decolonization. I will try to wrap that all up nicely at the end. But I will start with this reading. But before I do, I want you to know that after 6 weeks of thinking about this, I am very, very certain about one thing. Other writers have asked me to describe the book in one word. What is the book in one word? I argued that word is quiet. And I say that because both empire itself and the work of confronting empire is often unbearably loud. So loud, in fact, that we are rapidly losing our ability to talk to each other. We are shouting at each other, but we're not speaking to each other. And that is a chilling truth. And it's a truth I'm trying very hard to disrupt. with this book. So this entry is called No Country for 8-Spot Butterflies. In Guam, even the dead are dying. As I write this, the U.S. Department of Defense is ramping up the militarization of my homeland, part of its $8 billion scheme to relocate roughly 5,000 Marines from Okinawa to Guam. In fact, ground has already been broken along the island's beautiful northern coastline for a massive firing range complex. The complex, consisting of 5 live fire training ranges and support facilities, is being built dangerously close to the island's primary source of drinking water, the northern Guamlands aquifer. Moreover, the complex is situated over several historically and culturally significant sites, including the remnants of ancient villages several thousands of years old, where our ancestors' remains remain. The construction of these firing ranges will entail the destruction of more than 1,000 acres of native limestone forests. These forests are unbearably beautiful, took millennia to evolve, and today function as essential habitat for several endangered endemic species, including a fruit bat, a flightless rail, and 3 species of tree snails, not to mention a swiftlet, a starling, and a slender-toed gecko. The largest of the 5 ranges, a 59-acre multi-purpose machine gun range, will be built a mere 100 feet from the last remaining reproductive Hudson Lago tree in Guam. If only superpowers were concerned with the stuff of lowercase earth, like forests and fresh water. If only they were curious about the whisper and scurry of small lives. If only they were moved by beauty. If only. But the militarization of Guam is nothing if not proof that they are not so moved. In fact, the military buildup now underway is happening over the objections of thousands of the island's residents. Many of these protesters, including myself, are indigenous Chamorros whose ancestors endured 5 centuries of colonization and who see this latest wave of unilateral action by the United States as simply the latest course in a long and steady diet of dispossession. When the U.S. Navy first released its highly technical and 11,000-page long draft environmental impact statement in November 2009, the people of Guam submitted over 10,000 comments outlining our concerns, many of us strenuously opposed to the military's plans. We produced simplified educational materials on the anticipated adverse impacts of those plans and provided community trainings on them. We took hundreds of people hiking through the jungles specifically slated for destruction. We took several others swimming in the harbor where the military proposed dredging some 40 acres of coral reef for the berthing of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. We testified so many times and in so many ways in the streets and in the offices of elected officials. We filed lawsuits under the National Environmental Policy Act, effectively forcing the Navy to conduct further environmental impact assessments, thus pushing the buildup back a few years. But delay was all we want, and the bulldozers are back with a vengeance. A $78 million contract for the live fire training range complex has been awarded to Black Construction, which has already begun clearing 89 acres of primary limestone forest and 110 acres of secondary forest. It is bitterly ironic that so many of the machines, these machines, bear the name Caterpillar, when the very thing that they are destroying is that precious creature's preciously singular habitat. To be sure, such forests house the host plants for the endemic Mariana 8-spot butterfly. But then again, maybe a country that routinely prefers power over strength, living over letting live, is no country for 8-spot butterflies. While this wave of militarization should elicit our every outrage, indignation is not nearly enough to build a bridge to anywhere. It is useful, yes, but we need to get a hell of a lot more serious about articulating alternatives if we hope to withstand the forces of predatory global capitalism and ultimately replace its ethos of extraction with one of our own. In the case of my own people, an ethos of reciprocity. And nowhere is that ethos more alive than in those very same forests. For it is there that our Zoamti, or healers, are perpetuating our culture. In particular, our traditional healing practices. It is there on the forest floor and in the crevices of the limestone rock that many of the plants needed to make our medicine grow. It is there that our medicine women gathered the plants their mothers and their mothers' mothers gathered before them. These plants, combined with others harvested from elsewhere on the island, treat everything from anxiety to arthritis. As someone who suffers from regular bouts of bronchitis, I can attest to the fact that the medicine Auntie Frances Areola Cabrera Meno makes to treat respiratory problems has proven more effective in my case than any medicine of the modern world. Yet, Auntie Frances, like so many other Zoamti I know, takes no credit for the cure. As she tells it, to do so would be hubris, as so many others are involved in the healing process. The plants themselves, with whom she converses in a secret language, her mother, who taught her how to identify which plants have which properties, and also how and when to pick them, and the ancestors who give her permission to enter the jungle and who on occasion favor her, allowing her to find everything she needs and more. More than this, she tells me that I too am part of that process, that people like me who seek her services out give her life meaning, that she wouldn't know what to do with herself if she wasn't making medicine, that the life of a healer was always hers to have because she was born breech under a new moon and thus had the hands for healing. But such things are inevitably lost in translation, and no military on earth is sensitive enough to perceive something as soft as the whisper of another worldview. Earlier this month, I received an invitation to serve on the Global Advisory Council for Progressive International, a new and exciting global initiative to mobilize people around the world behind a shared vision of social justice. So, of course, I said yes. Truth be told, I know little by way of details. What kind of time commitment are we talking about? How will we work as a group? Who else said yes? But I am ready anyway. Ready to build a global justice movement that is anchored, at least in part, in the intellectual contributions of indigenous peoples. Peoples who have a unique capacity to resist despair through connection to collective memory, and who just might be our best hope to build a new world rooted in reciprocity and mutual respect for the earth and for each other. The world we need, the world of our dreams, the same world who, on a quiet day in September, bent down low and breathed in the ear of Arundhati Roy. She is still on her way. Thank you.
This is Your Humanities Half Hour.
I Northern Marianas Humanities Council bulaguinahanya puri historian Marianas dan kultura. Sinyon soda esisihanan formasyon gi zon mami website nmhcouncil.org pat bisita gi YouTube pat Facebook. Guahalokwe diferentes klasen leblunay sinya unfan. I Northern Marianas Humanities Council Hazuzura todo I experiencia tautau.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. We're listening to excerpts from the remarks of Julian Aguon, spoken recently during CNMI Humanities Month in Saipan. Julian, an author, an activist, a lawyer, is speaking on his latest publication, The Properties of Perpetual Light.
I'll talk for roughly 5 more minutes, and then I will open it up, and I really want to hear from you all. I'm so honored to be here. You have no idea. This is the best way to end a national book tour. It absolutely is. I have, learned so much from people here over the years. I remember when I was very young and very skinny, writing yet another book. And I came and I interviewed so many of the Saina here, so many of the elders about so many things. And so I really owe a debt to, the people here who are my people too. So I just quickly wanted to talk about the origin of the book. Because this book really is, in some ways, just like the literary equivalent of a broken heart. This book is about brokenheartedness. It absolutely is. People ask me all over the country, including very famous writers, what is the book about? It's about my own attempt to mend my broken heart. That's what this book is about. And when I say that, I mean, I wrote this book at the height of the pandemic, and so multiple sort of forces were just sort of like pressing down on my chest at one time. It was not only COVID-19 and the immediate loss of certain loved ones to this virus. It was also USS Theodore Roosevelt docking in Guam, over the strenuous objections of so many of my people and my community, and them coming ashore and exacerbating the COVID-19 pandemic, spreading the virus. The military personnel who came off that ship, this was all while I was writing the book, the military personnel who came off that ship went to the hotels, partied, went from room to room, left, ate at bars, ate at restaurants, thereby further spreading the virus in such a ridiculously unchecked manner. Then, on top of that, the highest levels of the military, like in almost classic form at this point, had no transparency. They refused to cooperate with the local government, including the government of Guam. The request was at the highest levels. And they basically, like they do when we ask for land back, etc., there was just such a flippance about it. It was so reckless, but it was also reckless plus arrogance, reckless plus mass disrespect. It was like all of that. Add on to that, there was a suicide rate that was sharply ascending. I was writing this book and I realized halfway through it, it was probably the piece that made me really know for a fact that I had something special here. I had a book, a real book, a book that could stand up, grow legs, and run around the world, was when I finished Zuku Means Yoke. I was like, wow, what is all of this public death doing? It's telling me something. And I revisited the first death I ever really had to recover from, which was the death of my own father from pancreatic cancer at 9 years old. And I was like, that is the death that sort of clothes the various entries in this book. It's that death. It's reckoning with my first massive loss and watching my nuclear family fall spectacularly apart, and feeling very, very, very alone, even when surrounded by other people alone, which is the worst kind of loneliness, And when I wrote that essay, I was like, wow, I know now what I am doing. I'm writing a book for young people. I'm writing a love letter to young people who reach for the language that they need to graft their will upon the world, who reach for the language they need to set themselves and their loved ones free. And they cannot find it. They reach and have no access. They reach and the words are just not there. I was like, that moment is what this book is going to be about. I'm not writing a book about perfection. I'm writing the opposite. I'm writing a book that is primarily investigating the moment where a young person reaches for the words that they need and they simply aren't there. And I believe that I came upon this insight naturally, but this to me is the sort of like truest insight about the book. I suspect that a writer is born not merely because of a love of language. I think a writer is truly born in the absence of language. It's the lack of language. is the inability to articulate what it is that you believe, what it is that you're fighting for, what it is that we are all fighting for. And I was like, if I can do that, I can turn my broken heart into a bridge and I can walk across it and meet everybody else. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I have a ton of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. So I love that. That's that idea that a writer's work begins where language fails, right? So it's kind of a technical process question. What is your process for finding those words? Like, what is your? God, this sounds like such a cliche question, but what is your writing process?
That's so cute. That presumes I have a writing process. I'm a hot mess when I write. I am just a mess. No, you should know that. And I think that's really important, especially for the young writers or would-be writers in the audience. You know, there's some weird, like, fake glamour, like, sometimes the young writer, the young ingenue writer, it's like, oh, your book just falls from the sky, you know, as a gift from the gods. You know, no, it is ruthlessly difficult work. It's very hard because in the beginning, like, what I try to do is, like, sometimes I don't write when I'm really happy, for example. When I'm really happy, I'm out. I'm swimming, I'm hanging out with my cousins, I'm barbecuing. Like, there's things I love to do when I'm very happy. I usually write when I'm literally, like, fuming. I start writing because it's moral outrage that brings me to the table. It's almost always because I'm pissed off, you know, that I start writing. And then is the key. And it's really important. This part it matters a lot. Then I wait. I let it breathe. Because if it's not, all of that white hot anger, all of that, you just end up burning everyone around you, including the people you love. And this is partly why we barely talk to each other when we disagree politically, which is ridiculous. I mean, you know, which happens every election. Here, Guam, everywhere. You know, I was like, my God, I mean, sometimes I see it here too. It's like, wow, it's so noisy. It's so loud when you're like, and I see people walk away prematurely from conversations with loved ones, would-be friends and family, would-be allies. They just give up. They just walk away, in part because we don't take the time, we don't have the spiritual maturity or something to just wait. Just let it breathe, just a minute. Because there's a way to recalibrate that rage in a way that's truly useful and ultimately more loving. I mean, because in the end, like, what are we here for? Like, we understand that we're running out of time. We understand that the sky is falling, to quote Chicken Little, you know? That the stakes are devastatingly high. They are. And our adversary is very, very powerful and well-resourced. So what does that mean? That means that we have to find a way to do our work while still never, ever negotiating away our intelligible essence. Like, who we really are as people. I mean, I came here, and I can get emotional too, because I just came here to step and I was like, my God, everyone here is so loving. Our people are fundamentally so loving, and there's so much generosity of spirit. I've been extended so much generosity in the last 48 hours. I was like, that is who we are. But maybe we're so busy yelling at each other or screaming it, and there's just white hot anger and there's no breathing. There's no space. It's like, you know, freedom and what we're struggling for includes the freedom to make mistakes. It includes the freedom to mess up. We have to make room for each other again. Like, you know, like, we have to, like, really contemplate, what are we doing here? If we can barely speak on this, like, tiny island, we have to recalibrate that and figure out and make room for each other again in our hearts. All battles are won there. Every battle is won in the human heart. Every single one. That's not a writing process answer, I'm sorry.
I'm curious about the original and new titles of the book. Is there a story there? And would you like to share that story?
I don't know if there's, like, a story. There's no, like, drama or anything. No. Basically, I work with UOG Press, and I just honestly want to give it up to Lola, who introduced me, because UOG Press was so amazing. I mean, you guys, like, in some ways, like, this, a little bit of anarchy if you read this, like it doesn't have like a set structure. It breaks all of the rules at once. It kind of crashes all of your parties at one time because there is no structure. It's kind of like an anthology, but of one person's work, which is interesting. In some ways, on the book tour, it was likened to like an art exhibit, like a gallery, where I'm like taking the reader to kind of different pieces, different times in my life that are really especially meaningful or memorable. But yeah, and I was just so grateful that UOG Press saw in it a true manuscript worthy of publishing. You know, like it was really, like, because it does break all the rules. And sometimes, you know, with publishing, it's really hard to convince someone to do something like unconventional. Wow, I can't even think. Unconventional. But the title, I was really happy with it. UOG Press was happy with it, The Properties of Perpetual Light. But ultimately, we decided, that I would also, the book was getting a larger than life. You know, the book was just like, it was crazy. You know, there was interest from other countries. And so I was like, so I worked it out with Lola that we would just, you know, sell some of the rights to Astor House in New York and to do some of the national and global distribution. Because UOG Press is so busy, they also have a backlog of tons of other titles that they're publishing. So there's so many authors who are trying to. So I said, okay, to really further differentiate the two, I would call it No Country for Eight Spot Butterflies. And my editor in New York really liked that. He said that could really resonate with people. And it's obviously the title essay of what I just read. So that's sort of the short answer.
In your work in decolonization and indigenous rights, what patterns or strategies have you seen consistently used by these colonial powers that have moved through our islands to take control from our indigenous people, and what strategies as indigenous people can we do to take back what we have lost and take back these powers?
Wow, that's a long question, but that's a deep question. That's a cavernous question, you know? It's a big one. I'm just gonna... Just the first thing that comes to my mind, you know, is that one of the strategies the colonial power uses is just a very, very pernicious, very mischievous use of language itself. As a writer, I pick up on that all the time. You know, the sort of colonial powers are very, very quick. So basically, you can use language in two ways, right? You can either clarify your intent, to clarify what you mean, bring us closer to some mutual shared understanding, or you can use language to mask your intent. The entire environmental impact assessment is an exercise in bad faith. All of it. Read it very carefully. Like, if you read these documents, it's like spectacularly... It's almost unbearable to actually read them anyway. Like, there's just all this make-believe. There's just all this deploying words, phrases, language to literally hide the ball. I mean, you know, like, and we see it across departments, across agencies. And by the way, I don't reserve my criticism only for the U.S. government. I have more than one, you know, a party that I'm critical, but the U.S. government is such a great example because they do it so well and so often. The State Department does it all the time, but so does the U.S. Department of Defense. And recently, so does Fish and Wildlife, and so does NOAA. If you read these, for example, incidental take statements, these letter of authorization, these are these long record of decisions. Some of you in the audience are familiar because you understand the process, you know, the federal environmental laws. But what you really see happening, I was like, wow, this is just all hidden in this one footnote. Or this is all the information. It's not in these 30 pages of text. It's an asterisk footnote.
Today's show has featured excerpts from the remarks of Julian Aguon on his latest publication, The Properties of Perpetual Light, given during CNMI Humanities Month in October 2022. Copies of the publication are available at Northern Marianas College Bookstore, at Marianas Creations in Garapan, or online at uogpress.com. That's uogpress.com. We hope you've enjoyed our show and would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to contact the Northern Marianas Humanities Council at nmhcouncil.org. That's nmhcouncil.org. This has been Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
Your Humanities Half Hour is a production of the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, funded in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.